He is a sad and deranged old man. Also, hi, welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. You daily dive into the news. Hope you've had a good Monday. Hope you're having a good MLK Jr. Day. But he is a sad and deranged old man. That is the general consensus you're seeing more and more of after what Trump just did. Because Norway's prime minister texted Trump about Greenland yesterday, and Trump then reportedly messaged him back, quote, "Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America." With Trump then continuing, Denmark cannot protect the land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you. And so just a few things we've got to break down from the Mad King's toilet time texts. One, the Norwegian PM has said, quote, "I have several times clearly explained to Trump what is well known, namely that it is an independent Nobel committee and not the Norwegian government that awards the prize." Two, Trump actually got the participation trophy version of the Nobel Peace Prize recently, because Maria Corina Machado actually tried to give her Nobel Peace Prize to him when she visited the White House last week.
Well, she offered it to me. I thought it was very nice. She said, you know, you've ended 8 wars, and nobody deserves this prize more than in history than you do. And I thought it was a very nice gesture.
Right, to many, she just completely debased herself, seeming very, very pathetic in an attempt to try to get some power. And then 3, Trump's super petty threat text. It brings us to the big bombshell over the weekend, Trump's new trade war. Because in a post on Truth Social that even caught his own party off guard, he threatened new tariffs against Europe until, quote, "such time as a deal is reached for the complete and total purchase of Greenland." With that, starting with a 10% tariff on Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland after February 1st. With that, then upping to 25% on June 1st if he still hasn't gotten what he's demanding. And this threat and all the flailing, it's coming as thousands of Danes and Greenlanders brave near freezing temperatures, rain, and icy streets to assert their right to self-governance in protest on Saturday. Right, and what you saw there was them waving their national flag, wearing mock red hats, reading "Make America Go Away," holding signs saying Greenland is not for sale, and chanting stuff like "No means no, Greenland is already great," and "Yankee go home."
Greenland is our country. We cannot be bought. We are people.
We're kind of scared for the future, because it feels like we don't have enough power to make our own decisions fully.
Of course, unfortunately for Greenland, that is not where this ends, because Donald Trump and many of his friends, as many women can attest to, they don't understand that no means no. And instead, you had Trump laying out his rationale for taking Greenland on Truth Social, saying, "We have subsidized Denmark and all the countries of the European Union and others for many years by not charging them tariffs or any other forms of remuneration. Now, after centuries, it is time for Denmark to give back. World peace is at stake. China and Russia want Greenland, and there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it. They currently have 2 dog sleds as protection, one added recently. Only the United States of America, under President Donald J. Trump, can play in this game, and very successfully at that. Nobody will touch the sacred piece of land, especially since the national security of the United States and the world at large is at stake." And adding on top of everything else, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland have journeyed to Greenland for purposes unknown. This is a very dangerous situation for the safety, security, and survival of our planet. These countries who are playing this very dangerous game have put a level of risk in play that is not tenable or sustainable. Therefore, it is imperative that in order to protect global peace and security, strong measures be taken so that this potentially perilous situation end quickly and without question. And adding, the United States has been trying to do this transaction for over 150 years. Many presidents have tried, and for good reason, but Denmark has always refused. And then claiming now, because of the Golden Dome and modern-day weapon systems, both offensive and defensive, the need to acquire is especially important. Hundreds of billions of dollars are currently being spent on security programs having to do with the dome, including for the possible protection of Canada, and this very brilliant but highly complex system can only work at its maximum potential and efficiency because of angles, meets, and bounds if this land is included in it. The United States of America is immediately open to negotiation with Denmark and/or any of these countries that have put so much at risk despite all that we have done for them, including maximum protection over so many decades. Okay. So, first thing, no, you are not crazy if you're like, why does he keep changing the reasons we apparently need Greenland? Yeah, he's given so many different reasons. National security, the minerals, the Nobel Prize, some even thinking it's actually just a distraction from the still unreleased Epstein files. And also, I think it's important we don't forget that when the New York Times asked him why he needs to own it rather than just having near limitless access to it, which is what the United States has now, he said, and this was his reasoning, because that's what I feel is psychologically needed for success. But even if we just go through the things that he noted in his post, you've got experts saying that not much of it makes any sense. Right, for starters, it's not true that hundreds of billions of dollars are being spent on the so-called Golden Dome. Instead, it's being said that it would be $150 billion, but none of that money has actually been allocated yet, and in fact, contractors are still in the proposal stage. But then you also have Bloomberg estimating that the real cost would exceed $1 trillion, and the key technologies haven't even been developed yet. And actually, speaking of that, those technologies chiefly consist of space-based missile interceptors, so experts say they have no idea why Trump thinks that he needs Greenland for that. In fact, the Pentagon itself never mentioned Greenland when it mapped out potential locations for the dome's land infrastructure. But then also, let's say Greenland was somehow necessary. The US doesn't need to own it, right? We, America, already have a military base there, and we have the right to expand our presence under a 1951 agreement with Denmark. Also, next up, the idea that Denmark has stubbornly refused the United States' territorial bids for 150 years, that's false. In fact, it's quite the contrary. Washington recognized Greenland as an equal part of the Kingdom of Denmark in a 2004 amendment to the agreement that I just mentioned. And then, as for the supposed threat from Russia and China, there's no indication either of them are planning to invade, if that's something that they've even ever considered. But again, it arguably still wouldn't matter because the US can put its troops there. You know, while Greenland, they don't have much of a military, they do have more than 2 dog sleds defending it. Right, and as for the European countries that journeyed to Greenland for purposes unknown, as Trump put it, we do know the purpose of that. It was for the very thing that Trump claims Greenland does not have: defense. They were conducting military exercises alongside Danish forces, and it's not like it was some kind of surprise for Trump. Like literally, the United States took part in a planning meeting on Friday in Greenland with NATO allies to discuss Arctic security. And so, you know, with all that, and then getting to the tariffs that Trump's imposing, they're not just gonna further weaken the NATO alliance. They're also likely about to blow up the trade deal that Trump himself struck with Europe last year. Right, because under that deal, he agreed to lower tariffs on the EU to 15% and Britain to 10%, but presumably these new duties will pile on top of those rates. So to figure out a response, you had European leaders holding an emergency meeting yesterday, and reportedly they discussed retaliatory tariffs. And those, they potentially include duties worth over $100 billion that were drawn up during last year's trade war. Though also, I'll say some leaders, notably French President Emmanuel Macron, are considering a much more drastic, never-before-used tool, officially called the anti-coercion instrument, but officially it's known as the trade bazooka. And that would reportedly target American service industries, most notably big tech companies. And of course, with this, you had a long list of European leaders verbally condemning Trump's threats, including those from Denmark, France, Germany, and the UK. Right, in the UK, you had Trump bringing people together, right? You had the British Labour Party's Prime Minister Keir Starmer denouncing the tariffs. Also, you had Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch calling the tariffs a terrible idea, and even the usually Trump-aligned right-wing populist leader Nigel Farage saying he certainly doesn't agree with the tariffs. Meanwhile, you also had Italy's far-right Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni calling these a mistake, saying that she doesn't agree with them. And hey, even at home, you had some American conservatives drawing a red line here with, for example, GOP Representative Don Bacon saying, Greenland is our ally and threatening an ally is foolish policy, especially when we'd be able to add bases there if we wanted. We sound too much like Putin, and it is wrong. You then also had Senator Tom Tillis writing that the tariffs are bad for America, bad for American businesses, and bad for American allies, but then also adding it's great for Putin, Xi, and other adversaries who want to see NATO divided. And all of this is just to add one more. You had Senator Lisa Murkowski calling Trump's tariffs unnecessary, punitive, and a profound mistake that would only push our core European allies further away while doing nothing to advance U.S. national security. You'll also understand this reaction was not universal. You had people celebrating the tariffs like Russia and Ted Cruz. Though those two, they celebrated for different reasons. Or you had the deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council saying, make America great again equals make Denmark small again equals make Europe poor again, as this idea finally sunk in dimwits. And you had that as Ted Cruz was, well, being Ted Cruz.
I want to commend President Trump for being single-mindedly focused on America first, on U.S. economic interest and U.S. national security interest. I believe it is overwhelmingly in America's national interest to acquire Greenland.
But ultimately, it might not matter what anyone thinks about it because the Supreme Court's gearing up in the coming weeks to rule on whether Trump's unilateral tariffs are even legal. And there, you know, we've seen them side with him on some things, like his spending cuts, while then also going against him on other things, like deploying the National Guard to Chicago. So you have people saying it's a bit of a toss-up. Though here, you also have many worried that if he can't get what he wants through economic coercion, he just might use the military force instead. Which, yeah, is something he's threatened either implicitly or explicitly numerous times over the past several months. But hey, he also, you know, he does have a hand-me-down Nobel Peace Prize participation trophy, and he says that he's looking to make a new international organization called the Board of Peace. With that, apparently meant to supervise the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, though Gaza is not mentioned in the draft charter, which has led many to speculate that this is really meant to displace the United Nations. But either way, right, Trump, he's setting it up so nations can get a 3-year membership for free, I guess, with ads, or they can pay $1 billion for permanent membership. And actually, over the weekend, Trump reportedly sent invitations to a number of countries, including Argentina, Canada, Egypt, France, Hungary, Hungary, India, Italy, Turkey, and Russia, with especially that last one being interesting for a group called the Board of Peace. And then there's more we've got to dive into in just a minute. But first, let me ask, you've ever download a game just to try it and suddenly you're up at 2 a.m. planning boss fights like it's your second job? Because that's what happened when I picked up this game because it dropped one of the coolest crossovers I've seen. Today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends, has teamed up with Assassin's Creed, and 5 legendary assassins are now playable. Ezio, Edward Kenway, Bayek, Basim, and Cassandra. And get this, you can unlock Ezio for free just by logging in for 7 days. Limited time thing, don't sleep on it. The designs look really faithful, animations, weapons, everything like, they walked out of the AC games. Ezio can stack nasty debuffs and then slice through defenses with that hidden blade feeling very assassin-y. Plus, there's a new event dungeon with Pontiff Augustin, special gear rewards, and way more ways to earn other assassins through events and tournaments. And hey, if you're jumping in, download using my link or QR code and you'll get 3 legendaries and 1 epic for free. Legendary Narma, they're returned right from the start. Epic Hugo after reaching level 15. Legendary Champion of your choice by picking 1 promo code out of 6 that you see on the screen. And log in 7 days to claim Ezio. Keep logging in, grab gear, simple. So hey, grab Raid today, use one of the promo codes, build your squad, and come find me in game. Then getting back into the news, right? More news you need to know. ICE is now reportedly tear gassing kids. Lawmakers are calling for it to be abolished. And all the while, you've got Trump and Tim Walz waging a cold war for control of Minnesota. You've got Trump's so-called Department of War now putting 1,500 active duty troops on standby to be deployed into Minnesota, saying that those troops who are from Alaska and specialize in cold weather operations will execute the orders of the commander-in-chief if called upon. And then at the same time, you've got Governor Walz mobilizing the Minnesota National Guard, though they also haven't been deployed yet either. But if Walz does pull that trigger, the Guard says that their mission will be to assist local law enforcement and public safety agencies, right? Noting that they're, quote, focused on protecting life, preserving property, and ensuring Minnesotans can safely exercise their First Amendment rights. And with all this, because you've got Trump pushing this situation further and further, you're gonna have militarized units in this public setting, they've added that they're gonna wear reflective vests to distinguish themselves from other agencies, aka ICE. Right, and while you had Trump on Friday walking back his threat to invoke the Insurrection Act, he didn't take it off the table. Right, and he's not letting up on Walz either. That same day, reports came out that the Trump Justice Department is criminally investigating both him and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey for allegedly obstructing federal law enforcement. But to that, you had Frey responding by saying that he won't be intimidated, and Walz saying 2 days ago it was Alyssa Slotkin. Last week it was Jerome Powell. Before that, Mark Kelly. Weaponizing the justice system against your opponents is an authoritarian tactic. The only person not being investigated for the shooting of Renee Good is the federal agent who shot her. And as all that's going down, you're seeing things like a Democratic representative from Michigan now introducing a bill to abolish ICE, AOC also renewing her call to abolish ICE, though I will say not every Democrat is on the same page here. And so you have Senator Ruben Gallego, for example, saying that abolishing ICE would be a mistake, but adding that it does need to be totally torn down and created in the image of what people want. You've also got California Governor Gavin Newsom being accused of being soft and really not the man for the moment for what he said to Ben Shapiro on his podcast.
AOC said this week that ICE should be abolished. You disagree?
Oh, I disagree when I think a candidate for president by the name of Harris said that in the last campaign. I came out, I remember being on Chris Hayes hours later saying, I think that's a mistake. So absolutely.
And that was also after he was criticized by the right for calling ICE state-sponsored terrorism.
Your press office tweeted out that it was state-sponsored terrorism, which, I mean... Yeah. Governor, I just have to ask you about that. Yeah. That sort of thing makes our politics worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, our ICE officers obviously are not terrorists.
Yeah.
A tragic situation is not state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Right, and so with Newsom, you have many independents and people on the left going like, who the hell is he actually? Right, is he the strong out there fighter that it appears that he is on social media, though that may just be his social media team? Or is he really just, or maybe more so, the Democrat that allows right-wingers to walk all over him whenever he's on their or his podcast? Right, and then all of this, it's going down as you now have a judge telling ICE and the Trump administration that they can't keep targeting protesters who aren't breaking the law, ruling, 1, federal agents cannot detain peaceful protesters who aren't obstructing authorities, and 2, they can't use chemical agents to retaliate against protected speech. Though of course this is Trump and his administration and those acting at the behest of it, so that may not stop anything. But most likely the way that you'd see this play out is that they would make the argument that the protesters, they were actually being violent, whether they actually were or not. In fact, it already appears that they're doing as much, and all of that is we're seeing reports about things like ICE tear gassing 2 parents and their 6 kids who accidentally drove into a confrontation between protesters and ICE on their way home from a basketball game. Or their mom, Destiny Jackson, saying they pulled over because protesters in parked cars were making a made difficult to pass. Her husband, Sean, then tries to back up, but federal agents had already surrounded their car, trapping them in. An agent yells for them to get the fuck out of there. They say, "We're trying." Destiny then tells Sean not to move, scared out of her mind that they're about to become the next Renee Good. And then she sees a flashbang, a tear gas canister rolls under the car. She feels the car bounce and come back down. Next thing she knows, the airbags have inflated, tear gas is filling the car. They're fumbling to unlock the doors for their kids. Right, and all the while, their 6-month-old is just strapped in a car seat until a bystander reportedly frees the baby and brings him to Destiny. And Destiny, she says that he wasn't breathing and was foaming at the mouth, so she starts giving him CPR as other people pour milk over his eyes to wash away the tear gas. But then luckily, in the end, the baby being revived and taken to the hospital with the whole family expected to be okay. And that story is also actually something that host Margaret Brennan confronted Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem with directly to her face yesterday on Face the Nation, before then also asking Noem about the judge's order to stop using chemical agents. And there you had Noem's response being,
It was a little ridiculous because that federal judge came down and told us we couldn't do what we already aren't doing. We just saw video of chemical agents being used. We only use those chemical agents when there's violence happening and perpetuating, and you need to be able to establish law and order to keep people safe. That's the only situation. So that judge's order didn't change anything for how we're operating on the ground, because it's basically telling us to do what we've already been doing.
Also with this, you had Brennan pressing Noem on Walz's claim that the agent who killed Renee Good isn't under any sort of investigation. And initially, you see Noem try to deflect and make this all about something else.
Let me talk to you about the officer, Jonathan Ross. He was struck. He was hospitalized.
Oh, don't say his name. I mean, for heaven's sakes, we shouldn't have people continue to dox law enforcement when they have an 8,000% increase in death threats against them. I know, but that doesn't mean it should continue to be said. We are following the exact same investigative and review process that we always have under ICE and under the Department of Homeland Security and within the administration.
Do I understand you saying that the Office of Professional Responsibility is doing its own probe to determine that the ICE agent violated protocol and that he was on 3 days of administrative leave, because that is what is in the handbook?
The protocol and the advice and the guidance within that handbook and within our policies is being followed exactly like it has been for years.
Right, but with all that, Noem never actually says outright that Ross was put on administrative leave or is under investigation, instead just blaming the left for attacking ICE agents. And while you also had Brennan referencing CBS reporting from last week that Ross suffered internal bleeding, reports have since come out that there was a major internal divide at CBS on reporting that. Because CBS says that they got the information from 2 anonymous US officials, but it was never actually able to confirm the extent of the bleeding. And you had CBS News' senior VP even noting that in an email, writing, "I'm no doctor, but internal bleeding is a very broad term and can range in severity. A bruise is internal bleeding, but it can also be something serious." So the newly appointed editor-in-chief Barry Weiss was reportedly very interested in covering that angle. Right? And that's really just the latest hot water that CBS News has found itself in under Weiss's so-called leadership. Right? Because if you didn't see it last week, they ran a full 13-minute interview with Trump and evening news anchor Tony Dokoupil, which to many sounded unusual because you usually don't get a complete 13-minute interview in a network news show that's crunched for time. But then over the weekend, you had the New York Times reporting on an audio clip where Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that Trump would sue the network if the conversation did not air that way. Well, the Times didn't publish the audio. Independent reporters shared clips matching the Times' transcript where you can hear a person who appears to be Leavitt say,
"Make sure you guys don't cut the tape. Make sure the interview is out in full." Yeah, we're doing it. Yeah. You said if it's not out in full, we'll sue your ass off. Oh, great. Okay. He always says that. I think that one. We only have 19 minutes and 30 seconds, so 13 minutes. How long did we talk? The whole thing will be out. Yeah. So, I appreciate you, Caroline.
Right, and this idea that Trump, the president, would sue a major news outlet if it made editorial decisions that he disagreed with, it caused a lot of backlash, especially because it's something Trump's done several times now. In fact, you might remember he landed a massive settlement from CBS last year over a 60 Minutes interview that it ran with Kamala Harris. Right, and that's why you have many saying this is a very real threat, even though some of the CBS personnel who were there read Leavitt's remarks as in jest. And with that, you had the Times saying, if you don't find it funny, that's fair, because once a president is willing to sue a news outlet and the outlet is willing to settle, the calculus for its journalists has indelibly, inexorably changed. Now, for their part, CBS released a statement claiming that they decided to air the Trump interview unedited the moment that they booked it. Leavitt also defended her demands by saying that the American people deserve to watch President Trump's full interviews unedited, no cuts, and guess what? The interview ran in full. Still, you had so many saying CBS airing the entire thing, not really being an independent decision, but rather as it being another another case of the network functioning as a mouthpiece for the Trump administration. And to many, it feels like just thing after thing, right? One of the biggest controversies actually happened last year when Weiss decided to shelve a 60 Minutes piece about abuses in the El Salvador prison, with the correspondent behind the piece claiming that it was a political decision, right? And actually, the reason I mention that is because we got an update. The piece ended up airing last night. The correspondent reportedly had to record a new intro and ending to incorporate some of the additions that Weiss requested, but the main body and the reporting in the story was the same as it was back in December when it was originally delayed. And with that, you had a spokesperson insisting that the network was always committed to running the story as soon as it was ready. But also with that, right, with people watching this story, you had many thinking, as they were watching it, that this was unethical and absurd that Weiss ever tried to shelve the piece in the first place. Many also speculating that Weiss and other Trump-friendly people there maybe didn't change the piece more because it actually leaked and played in Canada and people would be able to compare and contrast the two. And with all this, as far as why there's been a rightward shift at CBS, you have some tying it to the fact that Paramount CEO David Ellison is the son of Larry Ellison, a billionaire who supported Trump. Also separate but really connected, you have people saying it's because Paramount's trying to throw a Hail Mary to acquire Warner Brothers, which is a merger that'll need Trump administration approval. But also even with that, I'll say that Trump has not been afraid to try to assert power over CBS here, something made very apparent in that threat to sue the network. And that's part of a larger friction between the Trump administration and a fully functioning free press. I mean, there are examples left and right. I mean, just last Friday, we learned that the Pentagon is revamping the military newspaper Stars and Stripes. Right, you the Department of Defense's assistant secretary saying that the outlet will refocus away from what they called woke distractions that siphon morale. That also is, the paper's not actually the Pentagon's to revamp. And actually with that, you had Stars and Stripes saying this announcement appears to challenge the editorial independence of Stars and Stripes, which, while a part of the Pentagon's defense media activity, has long retained independence from editorial oversight from the Pentagon under a congressional mandate that is governed by First Amendment principles. With also the editor-in-chief saying that the people who risk their lives in defense of the Constitution have earned the right to the press freedoms of the First Amendment. Adding, we will not compromise on serving them with accurate and balanced coverage, holding military officials to account when called for. So there have been a lot of eyes on that situation, especially since this news came just after the Washington Post reported that people applying to work for Stars and Stripes, they were asked if they support Trump's policies. Right, and applicants using the government's job site have been asked things like, how would you advance the president's executive orders and policy priorities in this role? Identify one or two relevant executive orders or policy initiatives that are significant to you and explain how you would help implement them if hired. But that, my friends, you beautiful bastards, is where your Monday Philip DeFranco show is going to end. Let me just say thank you for watching. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow for another daily dive into the news.